We are hosting a info session regarding hi, I'm Shin. I'm the network coordinator at the Oregon Community Food Systems Network, and I'm here today presenting with a number of really awesome network members who've been working on this GusNIP capacity building and technology grant. And today we're hosting an info session because we heard a couple weeks ago that we were awarded this grant. And full disclosure, we do not know how much money exactly that we're getting. We applied for $25,000. So we are still awaiting to hear what that full award amount is. And Jen is currently contracted with OCFSN and has been supporting us in the project management of pulling together a potential GusNIP grant and also in applying for this grant that we just received. So thank you so much, Jen, and I'm going to pass it over to you and let you talk folks through what's next.
Of course. Thanks, Shin. So yeah, like what Shin just said, I'm Jen Coate and I've been contracted with OCFSN. I also did my practice experience when I was in grad school with them and just loved OCFSN. So I just wanted to keep on working. But so like she said, we're talking about the GusNIP capacity building and technology grants. And then this is just like an info session. So let's go to the next slide because I have a glossary of terms, if possible. Thanks. Okay, so what is GusNIP? So I'm going to be using these acronyms that I have kind of come accustomed to, and I realize that the team pointed out that not everyone realizes what they are. So GusNIP is this larger federal USDA grant, short for Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program. An RFA is the request for application for this larger application process because we already did the RFA for the mini one. The Capacity Building and Technology Grant is this mini grant awarded for aiding the application of the larger grant that Shin was just explaining that we received, We haven't received the funds yet. We were told that we received them. We will be receiving them. And then the NTAE is this Nutrition Incentive Program Training Technology Evaluation Information Center. And that's who has been awarding this mini grant. And they offer resources and services to aid in this larger application. So I hope that that clears anything up that I might be talking about. But if not, we're going to send out a copy of these slides. So you can always refer to them as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is GusNIP? It became a thing back in 2018 because of the Farm Bill. It provides funding opportunities for projects providing incentives that increase purchases of fresh fruits and veggies to low-income consumers. It also supports partnerships, so it wants to bring people together to facilitate growth in states with low participation, et cetera. And then they have 3 different types of grants. So one of them is this nutrition incentive, which is specifically for SNAP and SNAP Ed programs, a cooperative agreement. So that is like what that, like the Nutrition Incentive Hub and the NTAE organization are doing. So they're like the ones providing resources for the larger grants. And then the produce prescription, which is the one that we will be going for. And I'll describe that in the next slide. So just based off of their website, it's the conducts projects that demonstrates and evaluates the impact of financial or non-financial incentive program prescriptions for fresh produce and vegetables, in addition to nutrition education, and increases the consumption and procurement of those vegetables, reduce individual and household food security, and reduce healthcare usage and associated costs. So go ahead into the next slide. And then these are the goals and objectives of this larger federal grant. The improvement in dietary health through increased consumption of fruits and vegetables, the reduction of individual and household food insecurity, and the reduction in healthcare use associated costs. So to me, this is kind of like what this VeggieRx working group at OCFSN is already doing. And so I think that that's why this grant looks like we are already doing these things. So let's go for it. So go ahead and go to the next grant or page, please. But the things to consider for this larger grant, this RFA is due in a month, May 16th, 2023. They just posted it pretty much in March of like mid-March, I would say. I can't remember, maybe Shin, if you can help me remember that date. Hasn't been that long ago. And we haven't even received the funds for this mini grant. And so like, it's just a really fast turnaround. We will also need like a grant writer, although I'm someone that can help pull some information together and make connections. I'm not a grant writer. Things that need to be included in that RFA is a logic model, a strategic plan, a healthcare partner, and then also an evaluation component. And the awarded amount is $500,000, and we can all use that, right? So that's why we're excited about it for the 2023. So like Shin said, we received this capacity building technology grant, which is that mini grant. And these are the components that we went for, that we budgeted for in the RFA. So grant writing support, like I just said before, coalition building, which is something that this network already does. Strategic planning, which we need assistance with because the last one, I think that the OCFSN Veggie RX group did was in 2020. And due to COVID, I feel like a lot of the goals and outcomes have maybe been pivoted or had to change. And then it's like other was the other thing. It's like if you have significant needs that will assist you for that fiscal year of 2020 or 2024 that might help in the development or submission of the GusNIP grant. And I believe that we budgeted for having specifically, we wanted community members to be included in this grant writing process, or like a needs assessment to kind of understand what it is we are moving forward to achieve. So that's the basis of the capacity building technology grant that we have received, have yet to receive that $25,000 funds. Excuse me, next slide, please. So what does this mean? So this is kind of an informational session saying what everything is, but it's also, what do you want to do? Your organizations are the focal point because you're the ones that are reaching out to the community. We need a project team. We need like a specific GusNIP project team, which is exciting that we can pay you now, hopefully once we get those funds. One of the biggest things that we had in that budget and the RFA is, I'm going to kind of go out of order. We want to prioritize a working group of experienced, trauma-informed, diverse recruits that encompasses the network's ultimate goal of creating a resilient regional food system for all Oregonians. That is like a focal point always of our organization. So we just want to make sure that we're including that in this project team that we're looking for. And then how do we prioritize small organizations? We also don't want to compete with anybody if anybody else is going for the produce prescription grant. I know that that was somebody in the survey even said that, and but it's kind of a good thing because we can all collaborate maybe. Again, things moving forward. The RFA is very specific about a healthcare provider, and one requirement is that it has to be a healthcare provider or a healthcare partner. So sorry. So it's like, do we create one? Do we utilize a larger clinic? Do we utilize all of the programs that are already doing this and then utilize their healthcare partners? What are all these issues of reporting after that look like if we do it that way? And then what do we want? We want to think universal and systematically. So your organization is so important and you're already doing that regional, local, statewide work, but how can we utilize what we know already to expand all these resources? Next slide, please. Okay, so the budgeted funds from our capacity building grant application. So again, we received this mini grant. It's $25,000. We are hoping. Have yet to receive them. If we accept it, has to be utilized this August, by the end of this August. That's whether or not we apply for the 2023 or the 2024. Again, that 2023 is May 16th of this year. They do not release the date for the next year, from what I have seen at all, until like 3 months beforehand. I think that's just like a capacity thing on their end. So what we can utilize these funds for is funds for in-person convening, traveling reimbursement or gas money, food, event space, and then your time. Funds for a grant writer. Do we know somebody who has experience with federal grants? It is a small amount that we budgeted for because we wanted to kind of include more of a community-based budget, but grant writing is so important and can like really make or break a federal grant. So we have some funds for that. And then community members, gift cards for a needs assessment for participants. What is working for your community members? What is not working for your community members? Why are people participating in your program? Why are they not? So what would help them? Things like that is kind of the information that we are hoping to gather by August. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the questions we already have, but let's add to the list. That's what this whole information session is for. So can we use OCFSN as a pass-through organization for members? That is we don't know yet. Every time I talk to this one person who I know like hates me at the Nutrition Incentive Hub, she just keeps saying that other organizations in Oregon keep asking the same questions. So I don't know who else is like going for this grant, but I think that they're kind of like, because the RFA is so specific for this larger grant, they're unable to really answer this question. But at the same time, everything that we have read looks like it could work. So hopefully that could just already be what we're doing. And then can we use a large healthcare organization like OHA to be our healthcare partner? Do we list all the organizations, kind of like what I was saying before? Then how do we gather direct data to use for this evaluation? A minimum required is about 150 participants to gather to statistically significant numbers. So that is quite a bit of data that we need to provide.
Jenna, a question just popped up. Where did it go?
It was like, what's the role of the healthcare provider?
Yes. I don't know why I can't see it anymore.
I'm so sorry. I keep saying partner or provider. So they are the person that is going to be prescribing the produce. They are your specific partner. And I feel like Lexi, maybe you would be able to help me with that, or Megan, because I know that we talked about this in our conversation that we had last week. Again, it's a very long RFA, and although I've read it numerous times, I do not know exactly how to answer this question.
I think one of the other big components is that there's a call for measuring healthcare utilization and health outcomes, and so that being a primary role of the healthcare partners.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your help. Yeah.
Can I ask a question, just a follow-up?
Mm-hmm.
My question there is like, so if you're writing this big grant, is the healthcare partner kind of like I don't know if the grant is oriented towards multiple programs applying as one unit, which is kind of, I think, what we're trying to do here. And in which case, each program would have its own healthcare partner that they're working with. So there might be multiple healthcare partners. It's not necessarily just going to be one healthcare partner. Or the healthcare partner is like the evaluation partner. So I'm just trying to understand what the role is of what they're calling the healthcare partner. I get the sense that it's more like you need clinical providers to be offering the nutrition incentive program to clients, to patients. That's my sense of it. And then in which case we would have multiple healthcare providers that are part of this grant. And then maybe you have like OHSU has been doing the evaluation stuff, but that would be a different purpose. Am I right in that assumption or assessment?
So that's kind of like the biggest question I think that I have, because a lot, like the earlier slide says that collaboration is a huge part of it, and that they want more organizations to be working together collaboratively to create larger produce prescription programs. So exactly what you're saying, I'm not sure if it would just be like one healthcare partner and then numerous like food hubs or something connected to that, or if it would be exactly what Megan was saying, was that like one person doing everything pretty much, or like having to do like the before and after survey and things like that. So that is a question that we already have that we're kind of waiting for a little bit more definition on. So I don't know if that helps. Yes, that is something that I can look more into and then kind of follow up once I have my like one-on-one with the questions that we have so far for the produce prescription grant.
Yeah, I think there's still a number of kind of gray areas that we need clarification on. So, right now we have these 3 key questions. I think whatever folks are still curious about and would like answers on, because Jen has this one-on-one meeting set up, or at least that access, then how do we make sure that we get those questions answered? Because again, like by we, I mean, OCFSN is not the expert in this space. All of you are, and everyone who's been participating in the VeggieRx working group. And so what we're trying to do is, again, provide capacity, because everyone's really busy and everyone has a lot on their plates and a lot of, so how can we help pull together the things that we're hearing from all of you and kind of connect some of those threads where they exist, right? Yeah, awesome, Eric. Eric just dropped in the chat that CSA Partnerships for Health currently administers both the GusNIP PPR and CCR grants. So happy to share any information on your experience of relevant and helpful. Yeah, I guess, Eric, do you know the answer to the question that Ecole asked?
Which question specifically? I've been digesting a lot of information about this round of PPR.
Yeah.
If I could just be reminded.
My question was whether or not we have, we're working with multiple health organizations, like each program has its own health organization that it works with. And so I just wondered for the grant, like it's going to be different for you, I think, because you're just one organization. But if we're applying as a group of organizations for this grant, which is the sense that I'm getting, we're going to have different healthcare providers. And is that okay? Or does it need to just be one healthcare provider?
Yeah, I don't know how a proposal would be shaped around that specifically and what would appeal for the review panel this year. I can speak a little bit to how our program is currently structured if that's time, or I can follow up later, but if for a short answer, our program partners with Multnomah County Health Department. So we serve 8 clinics in Multnomah County and OHSU Richmond, and all of these clinics are federally qualified health centers. And so that is how we manage the healthcare provider aspect of it. And then internally, we have a leadership team that's composed of members of all of those healthcare partners for internal decision making. A lot of our funding is actually passed through in the sense that the majority of it goes to, well, the majority that's not committed to staffing and evaluation costs goes directly to farms. And most of that contract is contracting farms to provide the CSA shares. And our program currently provides 300 summer shares and currently 80 winter shares. The GusNIP PPR grant was for the summer program, and our evaluation is centered on the summer aspect of it. We received another 400,000 and change COVID relief grant, which was for currently funded PPR grants. I don't think that's going to be the case going forward with the end of the emergency declaration, but that was to evaluate the effectiveness of a year-round model by adding a wintertime component onto it, to the point of that someone raised earlier about measuring the health outcomes around being provided a prescription veggie program specifically in federally qualified health centers.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that information, Eric. I found that super helpful.
I think the one thing I also want to add is I know there's a lot of momentum right now with produce subscription and VeggieRx programming and potentially funding around that, and not just in the form of the GusNIP grant. So I think I know the dates associated with this particular grant and needing to consume that by the end of the summer. I don't want us to feel scarcity in terms of, we don't figure it all out by the end of the summer, then whoops, that's it. We don't have an opportunity anymore. That's not the case, right? I think all this is we now have, there's a recognition of the value of this coalition and this network in being able to pull people together to share information and to collaboratively work on projects, not just, and I think we've done that across a lot of different working groups. So I kind of just want to ground us in that, and also share that I have been working with the Oregon Health Authority, and they just submitted an application for a SPAN grant, and we won't find out about that until this upcoming fall, whether or not we're going to receive any of those funds. But the reason I share that is because that will also be in support of VeggieRx and produce prescription programming and the work that we're already doing here. So that is impending as well. So and that's not for certain. So I think if there are things that we can do now and using these funds to continue to help us get a little bit further in how do we all keep moving forward together. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, exactly. Also, thank you. Yes, does anybody have any other questions right now? Because we only have a couple more slides and then we can open it up and kind of go through survey questions or whatever you want to utilize this time for, or we just put an hour down because we weren't sure how many questions people would have. But can you go to the next slide for me, please? So what is it that we want to do? Exactly what Shin was just talking about. For us, we have the survey. Thank you for everybody who has filled out that survey. It's been so useful. We'll be sharing out the data for the next section. We're going to be going over the next section, which is being held Thursday, April 20th. Everyone should have gotten that invite. It's going to be pretty much the same in terms of the information that I'm going over. But then hopefully we'll have more information from the actual organization that is helping with this larger grant, that Nutrition Incentive Hub. So I'll be able to ask that specific question that Nicole asked, as well as kind of verify things that like Lexi and Megan and I have kind of gone over, because I know that Kaylee is out of town also right now too. And so it's just kind of been filling in gaps and trying to gather as much information as possible. And then the RFA again is due May 16th of this year. So that is kind of all I have. I don't know if anybody else on this little team that has helped so much put all this together. We have really been trying to make this a network, community-based info session, because your opinion and what you want to do is why we're here. Thanks, Emily, for putting that survey back in there.
And if folks don't have specific questions, but, you know, because I think sometimes that's always hard to think of off top of, you know, maybe if I can offer what more information or what are some of the things that you might need to figure out how or where you fit in this? Genevieve, go ahead.
So we don't have a VegRx program yet, and I'm applying for a separate pool of funding through Trillium, and I'm running into the issue of I don't have that healthcare provider to do the prescription. And so in trying to solve that problem myself, I'm seeing a little bit of where this problem could be all of us having to scramble and find someone, but also that if we have a single provider that they wouldn't be able to manage the amount. So I think what Eric was talking about with just kind of a little bit of the process of it, because I don't do this work yet, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about some of the folks who are currently running these programs, to be able to see, to better imagine what it would look like with additional funding.
Carla, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. So I don't know what question I have, but I actually wanted to just respond to the question. I don't know where your name went, you disappeared, but the person who just spoke. So we work with Virginia Garcia Healthcare Center, and with more funding, and all of you know of this because Kaylee was the manager before I arrived a year ago. But so this Produce RX program has been running since 2014, which is pretty amazing. What we want to do is venture out. We want to expand, and we are only in Washington County currently, but we see the need to get out there in other areas, but we don't have the capacity, one, and we don't have the funding, two. And another thing that I wanted to bring up is that we do also pay a little bit of money for our healthcare coordinator. So we have a coordinator that works within Virginia Garcia, and she does a lot of the application process and enrollment of all these patients, along with my coordinator at Adelante. And so we also take into consideration their time and do they have the capacity? Because Virginia Garcia would love to bring on more doctors, more physicians. They have about 4 teams. They're color coded, so they have the 4 teams. We just did a tour of their facility recently, and we're only working with one team and kind of with one of the other ones. But it's because only one coordinator is getting out there to try to get all of these doctors to prescribe this prescription to these patients. So it's just really hard. And then I was thinking of something that came up to mind is I don't know how it would work with all of the people who do have the people here today in these organizations who do have Produce RX programs already. All of our clinics are so different. Ours is very focused on the Latina community. We have to have a Latina provider. We can't switch to somebody else. We would have to, like, and I don't want to also change it. I want to continue with what we've been doing with Virginia Garcia because it's an amazing partnership. But I don't know, just throwing things out there because I think this is a brainstorming session, and just I love that you all set this up. And I feel like I haven't been at these meetings for a long time, so I love being able to come back. But I can answer any questions anyone has specific to the Adelante Mujeres Produce RX program and how it's running, because it's really successful. And we just got another increase from Care Oregon for funding, so things are really moving, but just no capacity.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Carla. We really, really appreciate all of your insight. And I think that's part of it too, is like all these programs across the state have different models. And so I think being able to share that and see what we're all doing is just really enlightening and helpful. And I'm also wondering, like in my mind, it's how do we kind of figure out the matchmaking partnerships, and having maybe identifying some sort of toolkit for doing that would be really useful. And then I'm also thinking about, like, is there, from the folks who have already been running programs and have these partnerships set up, is there a way for us to like identify a list of things to consider to help healthcare providers or community orgs determine like what level of readiness they're at? Like maybe that's something that would be helpful to create. I don't know. And then I just want to answer Cole's question real quick, and then Lexi, go ahead. And also, I don't think we need to do hand raising. I think folks, if you just want to speak up, that's totally, that works for us. But I think Cole, we haven't applied for that $500,000 grant yet. So I think some of that is, a lot of that's negotiable based on what partners come to the table and who's co-writing this grant together.
And that's the one that's due May 16th, right?
Yep.
That's so fast.
Yeah.
Oh my
Well, we just
God.
got this capacity building grant, which is the buildup to writing this grant. We were just awarded it. We have not received funds, I think, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. And did you say there's another grant that you could, if we don't hit the May 16th deadline, there's the 2024 grant?
Yeah,
that
this
Jen
appears to
should
be an
have?
annual grant. So if we can't apply for this year, then, I think whatever information that we're able to pull together for this year, it's not only applicable for this year. All it does is get us a little bit closer to readiness for when the right funding source comes.
I guess my question was the GusNIP grant that you're writing for May 16th. Does it require a certain amount be for actual prescription, like just funds for funding food, and then a certain amount for admin? Or is it like a totally blank slate and you can request whatever you want? I'm guessing that it has to be some funding for food because they're requiring a healthcare partnership. So I'm just trying to understand.
Good question. Yes, there is like an entire budgeted template and then requirements in that RFA. I guess I don't know off the top of my head how much is for produce. I think that what Shin was just kind of saying, it is like it's a whatever you can make that program fit into that RFA, if that makes sense.
Yeah, my understanding is that it would follow somewhat of the general guidelines of 10% for administrative costs kind of overall. There's also another opportunity right now through Trillium, and I'm applying for it down in our area because there's two areas of focus. There's the tri-metro around Portland County, tri-county area around Metro Portland area, and then there's Lane County and a little bit of Eastern Douglas. And I know in our area, there's $7.8 million for community health benefit initiative. And I think that as far as I've heard, I'm the only person in the area trying to tackle food as part of applying for those funds. And I'm trying to bring in, I have Food for Lane County, I have Waste to Taste and folks in our area and stuff, but this could go to food purchases. It can't cover any staff or administrative costs at all. It's just to bolster programming that kind of already exists. And so, yeah, I'm trying to figure that's due April 28th. So I'm really grateful. Thank you, Michelle, for offering to help me figure that out. But so those CCOs are also providing funding, and like Trillium this year is kind of moving away from food security, although they recognize it's still an issue. So they're trying to do the health benefit and making a stronger argument on that than just food security. But Pacific Source in particular is looking a lot at just food security this year. So those are places where this group, in determining what the VeggieRx program could look like optimally, there's some other funding kicking around.
And I can add, because I work for Pacific Source. The first one thing I was going to add is just for programs that are just trying to start. I think the CCOs in your region are probably a really great starting place. We work with every clinic for most of our regions, and I can say that across Oregon, not just Pacific Sources CCOs. We all operate a little bit differently in terms of CCO models, right? So I cover Portland and the Gorge for Pacific Source, and our partners and how we distribute CBI is completely different, and food is not a priority. Not necessarily not a priority, but we don't do an open grant application process like it sounds like Lane County's Pacific Source partnership with the Health Council is doing. So, but I do think if you get this grant, if you're starting to think about expanding a program, I think contacting your CCO, and if you need help doing that, of course, if it's a Pacific Source CCO, super easy for me to point you in the right direction. If it's not a Pacific Source CCO, still not impossible for me to find out a good contact for you if you're in a different region. I just think the CCOs have a really good handle. Like I know which clinics, I don't even work directly with clinics, but I can rattle off the top of my head which ones are overwhelmed and wouldn't be a good partner this year in our region, and which ones would be a great partner this year in our region and would be really stoked. So I think everybody across the state of Oregon has that resource in your local CCOs. And usually, you know, we all have community-based folks. We have folks who are solely focused on health equity and tribal work. These are requirements from OHA, so these positions exist within every CCO. And I think we're all happy to chat and try to move this forward. I think most folks working in healthcare will acknowledge food is a huge social determinant of health. So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Okay, well, does anybody have anything else they want to share, or should we kind of think about what, yeah, thanks so much for that, Lexi, and also that link, Claire, that's awesome. So for me, my next steps are just going to be kind of taking what has just been said in this and kind of keep bothering my contact at the NIH, which I do almost daily, and then kind of figure out what it is that we want to do. Does anybody have anything else they want to say?
I think the other thing that comes up is we're probably gonna need to pretty quickly identify who has any capacity to work on pulling this together before May. And the small team that's kind of been coordinating a lot of this, who's on the call right now, just because I know not everyone is familiar, it's been myself, Jads, from Oregon Food Bank, Jen, obviously, thank you, Emily, who is currently doing her master's in public health at OHSU, as well as Michelle from Yasuke Commons. And am I forgetting anyone? Nope. So I think all of us are, for the most part, Portland Metro based, and likely we'll probably try to host something in person if folks, I guess I'm wondering if anyone has space or would be interested in doing that with us over the next probably three weeks. And it's up, and I'm just putting that out there. And no need to commit to anything right now, but just wanted to put that out into the world.
And I was going to ask too, just thinking about folks that maybe are interested in being on the project team, should they reach out to Jen or just like the OCFSN, your email? Just thinking about how folks could like contact about that.
Yeah, I think the best way to connect with us would be through Jen. It's jen.coat@ocfsn.org, or you can also CC me on it, info@ocfsn.org. I just know I'm hosting some convenings, so I'll be a little bit more delayed in my response. But Jen is essentially the acting project manager for pulling this together. All right, well, let's give everyone back 15 minutes. Thank you so much for joining. We will be sharing out this recording later this week / early next week. And yeah, please feel free if folks, if you talk to folks who would be interested in this but weren't able to join, definitely connect them over to Jen. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week, y'all.